Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads and you're watching Booktube Rewind. So basically, this series is going to be me reading books or series that were popular years ago on Booktube, because I have a couple series on my shelves that I have not read but yet I bought years ago, and I really want to get those off my shelf. Plus, I always love watching people read something for the first time that I loved. So the first one I'm actually gonna do is not really the best one to do for Booktube Rewind, because I'm not 100% like, I'm just gonna explain it. It's the King of Scars Duology. So this is not really what I had in mind when I started this series. Like, the series I was thinking about were like the Cinder series or the Ember in the Ashes or Penryn and the End of Days. But anyway, this I really want to read these, so that's why I am gonna do a Booktube Rewind on them. Basically, this is like the third series in Leigh Bardugo's Grisha series. So this follows Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina. So you have to have read the Grisha or the Shadow and Bone trilogy and Isx of Crows Duology before reading this book. This video is going to be, I'm not going to have any spoilers for this duology. Maybe at the end, but mostly it's going to be spoiler free. I might have spoilers for the Isx of Crows duology and the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I will also warn you once I get into spoiler territory. So you're good to watch even if you've never read any Leigh Bardugo. But I'm very excited to read these, and yeah. So I just finished the first part of King of Scars. So I just finished the part that is called The Drowning Man. And now I'm going to be starting the second and last part, which is The Witch in the Wood. I am very happy to be reading this. You guys know my expectations were very, very low because I've heard so many mixed things about this book. Also, even though I really, really love Nikolai, I heard from a lot of people that it's more like a fourth Shadow and Bone book as opposed to like a third Isx of Crows book, even though this is supposed to be Isx of Crows and the Shadow and Bone trilogy getting together, which technically they are, but it's only Nina from the Isx of Crows series that we see, whereas in this book we see a lot of people from the Shadow and Bone series. Obviously, two of the main characters are Nikolai and Zoya, but we also see pretty much everybody that was close to Alina in Shadow and Bone. So we see Tamar, Tolia, Genya, all the people from Shadow and Bone we see here. And I wasn't a hater of the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I actually pretty much loved every character except for Mal. And Alina was also not my favorite. So in that case, I am enjoying it a little bit more than Shadow and Bone. But like I said, so far it is surprising. It is surprising me. I really love it. And I do have to say what you want, but I think Leigh Bardugo is an amazing writer. She has the most beautiful sentences. So this obviously is going to be a non-spoiler vlog. Basically, there's two different stories, basically. So you follow Nina while she's in Fjerda, and you follow Nikolai and Zoya while they are trying to cure Nikolai from things that happened in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. And yeah, honestly, Nikolai is kind of out of control. Like, he's a new king, obviously, but he has been dealing with a lot of things from the war, which happened 3 years ago. And so obviously in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Darkling obviously was the bad guy. And now there's a cult that has sprung up that is worshipping the Darkling. So obviously Zoya especially is really struggling with that. I really enjoyed this book that we are learning more about Zoya's past and about how she is, because obviously in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, it was only in the third book that she finally became Alina's friend, whereas in the first book especially, she was definitely very much an enemy. And she's always been this aloof character that has kept everybody at arm's distance with her words especially. So it is nice to get her point of view, to learn a little bit about how she grew up, about who the people she loved, and, you know, what she's struggling with. I do definitely enjoy the scenes with her and Nikolai. I'm 100% shipping them. I think they would be amazing together. But obviously, he's a king, and Grisha are still very much, even in Ravka, they are sometimes looked down upon. And then Nina is in in Fjerda for a specific reason. And there she meets a girl who is Fjerdan, but also Grisha, which is very, very dangerous for her because I'm pretty sure they burned Grisha at the stake in Fjerda. So yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. Is it Isx of Crows? No, but I never thought that it would be. You guys know I love Nikolai. Nikolai has always been one of my favorite characters, so it is nice to get more of him. And like I said, I do enjoy seeing all the other characters from the Shadow and Bone series. So, but I do have to say, right now, if you really hated the Shadow and Bone series, I would not really recommend the King of Scars, like this book, because like you have to at least enjoy, like if you, like me, didn't enjoy Alina and Mal, then that is fine because they don't make an appearance in this book. But if you disliked the whole world, you disliked all the rest of the characters, then you're not gonna love this. And honestly, like right now, this sits at a 4 for me. Right now it's not a 5. Really has to depend on the second half, whether or not this is gonna stay a 4 or go into the 5 or 3 category for me. But yeah, so far it is surprising me in that I was not expecting a lot from this, and it is surprisingly good in my opinion. I'm trying to think if I want to say anything else. I think those are my thoughts for now. And I guess I'll just update you once I actually finish this book. I think I accidentally spoiled myself a little bit when I tried to look up how many pages this book had. So yeah, oh, one thing I did want to say, I did really love seeing, like, obviously in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, there were 2 couples that got together. So Genya got together with the person she loved, and Tamar got together with the person she loved. And I love that they're both married now. That is fun to see, obviously, because there was a pretty big time jump from the end of the Shadow and Bone trilogy to this, because that time jump was basically the Isx of Crows duology. Like I said, I guess I'll talk to you once I finish King of Scars. So I'm here to give you my review for King of Scars. I'm gonna keep this spoiler free. I do have some spoilery thoughts, but I'll leave those at the very end of the video, because the spoilers I have are actually spoilers for Crooked Kingdom. So if you have read that book, then you're fine to watch that spoiler section. But like I said, I'll just leave that at the very end. King of Scars, to be honest, when I first finished it, I gave it 5 stars because it was so wonderful to be back in this world, to see Nikolai and Zoya, and see Tolia and Tamar and all the other characters, and Genya as well, and David. But upon reflection, it has been a couple days actually a week since I finished it, and it's really a 4 stars. It's not a 5 star. Basically, this is pitched as a mix of the Isx of Crows duology and the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and as Meg with Books has said multiple times, and I 100% agree, that is not what this is. This is Shadow and Bone number 4 with an added character of Nina. This really has nothing to do with Isx of Crows. I do have to say, you do have to have read the Isx of Crows duology and the Shadow and Bone trilogy before reading this, because it will spoil everything, and especially you don't want Crooked Kingdom to be spoiled for you. So at the end of the day, it's a 4 star, because does this book really need to exist? No, but because of nostalgia's sake, plus I really do love Leigh Bardugo as an author. Like, some of the lines in here I was just floored by. She writes things beautifully, and I really love this world, and I did really love the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So yeah, but I do have to say, if you did not love that trilogy and you only love the Isx of Crows duology, then I would say don't pick this up, because you're not really gonna enjoy it. I did really love seeing Nikolai, especially. Nikolai is one of my favorite characters of all time. So I did really love seeing him. I loved reading and knowing more about Zoya, because you finally get her point of view. And obviously she was sort of a mystery in the Shadow and Bone series. We didn't really know anything about her. But really finding out about her background and about the people she loves, I did really love that. And obviously I did love seeing Nina, because in this book she's actually in Fjerda, so seeing her come to terms with that was also a nice storyline. But overall, I do feel like either this book was either not necessary, or the 3rd book in the Shadow and Bone series was not necessary because of events that happened here. Yeah, but like I said, it was 4 stars. I did enjoy my time reading it. I did enjoy myself. I did enjoy being in this world again and being with these characters again. So yeah, 4 stars. I guess I would recommend it to a particular audience. I guess I would recommend it to people who have read and loved the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and or people who really, really love any of these three characters. So if you really love Nikolai, or really love Zoya, or really love Nina, then I would recommend it. But other than that, I don't think I would actually recommend it. I think the Shadow and Bone trilogy plus the Isx of Crows duology is a well-rounded series on their own. But I do have to say, this is my thoughts without having read Rule of Wolves yet, so I still need to read that to make my final judgment. But overall, was an enjoyable book, and I am honestly glad I read it, because I did, like I said, I did enjoy the Shadow and Bone trilogy, plus Nikolai is one of my favorite characters of all time. So I'm currently reading Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo, which her covers, or like the actual covers, are beautiful. Like, Leigh has some really great cover designers here. So I am on page 299. So I'm over halfway through, and I am enjoying it to a certain extent, because right now I'm at a Nina chapter, so I'm gonna start one right now. And Nina's chapters are just not my favorite. I don't like her storyline. I wish this book wouldn't have involved her at all. Or like in the background, like I wouldn't have minded her being like a part of the story, but just not a point of view character. I just don't enjoy her storyline. I feel like since it isn't that long from the events of Crooked Kingdom, it cheapens what happened there, having her be a prominent character with the storyline that Leigh is having her have. I know this sounds very vague, but obviously this is a non-spoiler vlog, so I don't want to spoil what happened in Crooked Kingdom, and I don't really want to spoil what happens in these books. And there's another thing that just happened that made me kind of angry, because this is the problem with spin-off books, is when you might have characters that have had their HEA in like the original series, a spin-off might completely take that away, which is happening here in multiple ways. So then in that case, I'm like, what was the point of everything that happened in the first book if we're going to have this spin-off where everything that happened there is going to be taken away? Plus, there are two characters in here where something heartbreaking happened to them, and that just broke my heart, because they've already been through so much, and I just wanted them to be happy, and this completely ruined that for me. So even though while I'm reading it, I am enjoying it, especially Nikolai's chapters and Zoya's chapters. I love Nikolai, I always have. And it is nice to see all the characters back from the the Shadow and Bone trilogy. But like I said, I don't like that things that were left off in a certain way are being revisited, and not in the best ways. But I do have to say, Leigh has such an easy writing style. Like, I'm flying through this book, even though this is probably not going to get a higher rating than 4 for me because of the things I just described. But her writing style is just so easy to fly through, and I'm just reminded how well she does characters. Because even in Shadow and Bone, like, as much as I did not enjoy like the literal main character, I do enjoy that series simply because of the side characters, simply because she does a good job with her characters. Like, I do feel like I know these characters through and through, and that is because of her writing. So although I do have to say, it is also because this is like the 5th book these characters are in, if we're talking about the Shadow and Bone characters, which are the characters that I am the most intrigued with. So yeah, I guess those are my thoughts for now, and I'll just give you my final thoughts on this series at the end of this vlog. And if you're asking me now, do I think this is necessary to read? I don't think so. Unless you really, really love Nikolai, which I do, then I guess pick it up. But I feel like just reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Isx of Crows duology will leave you very much satisfied. And this will just not add to that. In fact, it might even subtract. So that's not a good thing, but it is how I feel. So, but obviously I've not finished this book yet. So I still need to read 285 or 288 pages. So almost, I am about halfway through, I would say. So yeah. So I finished Rule of Wolves yesterday, and basically my thoughts, the thoughts I gave you in my update still stand. I do have to say the second half of this book I was enjoying immensely. Like, it was action scene on top of action scene on top of action scene, and we saw some characters from the Isx of Crows duology in here, so I really loved that. We saw every single character in the Isx of Crows duology. We saw Kaz, we saw Inej, we saw Jasper and Waylon. And since we never saw them in King of Scars, this one is my favorite out of the two, even though I gave both of them 4 stars. But I do stand by what I said in my update. I don't think this series is necessary at all. Like, I think you can read the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I think you can read the Isx of Crows duology and leave it at that. Although I do have to say, this does end with a cliffhanger that involves the Isx of Crows characters. So I do feel like, wasn't Leigh Bardugo supposed to write like a third Isx of Crows book? I do think that will have a tie-in with this one. So I do think once that book comes out, then these two are necessary to read. But in my opinion, I just feel like she did such a great job with both those series that she could have just left it at that and moved on. Or she should have just made this an entirely different book without involving so many plot lines from the Shadow and Bone trilogy. But since that's not really possible, considering both Zoya and Nikolai played such a big part in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I did love the romance between Zoya and Nikolai, but Nikolai is one of my favorite characters of all time, like of any fictional character, so I just wanted him to be happy, and I'm glad that Zoya made him happy. One person that did not make me happy was Nina, and I talk about it a little bit more in the spoiler section, and that spoils the Isx of Crows duology, so it doesn't spoil this series at all. So if you want to know more of my thoughts as to why Nina's character bothered me in this duology, then I explain it a little bit more in the spoiler section. So definitely watch that if you have read the Isx of Crows duology, because once again, I will not spoil the King of Scars duology. Are there any more thoughts? Yeah, so first of all, that is one thing why I didn't like Nina's character. And also I just found the Fjarda scenes to be boring. In fact, in Rule of Wolves, there were 2 additional POVs, and I enjoyed those POVs more than I did Nina's, so that should tell you enough. And it makes me sad because Nina was one of my favorite characters in the Isx of Crows duology, so I hate the fact that it's not that I don't like her, it's just that I don't like her point of view, and it does sour me a little bit on her character, which sucks considering she was my favorite. But having said all that, Leigh Bardugo proved once again to me that she's an amazing author, because there are some lines in here that are beautiful. I cannot wait to read other books by her, because so far I've only read her Grisha books. I really want to read her Ninth House book. I want to read The Familiar to see if she's like can solidify herself as one of my favorite authors, although I do have to say right now she definitely is. Am I glad I read them? Yes, but that is mainly because I'm such a Nikolai stan. Do I think you should read them? I would say skip it, honestly. I would say stick to the Isx of Crows duology and the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and you can skip this. Although, like I said, I don't know what else she's gonna do with the whole Grisha world. Maybe these will be required reads. I guess those were my thoughts. For my next Booktube Rewind, I think I'm going to read the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy by Laini Taylor, since that is a part of my books I want to read in 2024. But I would really love to know what like old school Booktube series do you want me to read? Leave those in the comments below and maybe I'll read those too. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did. Okay, now for the spoiler section. I do have to say, I'm not going to spoil this book. I'm only going to spoil Crooked Kingdom. So if you've read Isx of Crows duology, then you're fine to watch this part of the video. One thing that really bothered me in this book was how fast Nina seems to be moving on. So obviously, Mateus died, and she hadn't even buried him before she started looking at somebody else. So there's obviously going to be a romantic relationship between her and, I forget her name, Hannah. I don't like that. I'm not saying Nina doesn't have the right to move on. I'm pretty sure Matthias would want her to move on, and I'm not saying that I wouldn't want her to move on, but I feel like he wasn't even buried yet and she was looking at somebody else. I do have to say there's not a romantic relationship in this book yet, but there are already lingering moments, or already her thinking somebody else was attractive. And I don't like that because he hasn't been dead that long. I feel like she needs to mourn. If she really did love him, another person wouldn't even be on her mind. I do have to say, this hasn't happened to me, where I love somebody and they died. So I couldn't tell you what the actual like time to mourn is, or if you would have those urges or not. But I do feel like, I don't know, I just feel like in any universe, this is too soon. Like, it hasn't even been a year yet. She hasn't even buried him. So I feel like Leigh Bardugo, if she wanted to give Nina another love story, she should have just waited until Rule of Wolves for her to even think about somebody else. I feel like in this book, she should have just had a friendship with Hannah and that be it. And then in Rule of Wolves, I would have wanted her to really realize that she was attractive and that Nina was having feelings for her. That is like the only thing I would really change about this book, because I started to look at Nina in a different light, and I don't like that because I did really love Nina, and I do really want her to move on, because obviously she cannot attach herself to a dead man for all of her life. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. If you have read this book, what were your thoughts about that? Do you think I'm overreacting, or do you agree? Leave all your thoughts down below.